The conference room went silent for the 14th time. 14 professional interpreters had tried. 14 had failed. And a $1 billion international deal was seconds away from collapsing. Tension hung so thick in the air you could almost taste it. Executives from 8 different countries sat around the polished glass table, their voices rising in frustration, translators shuffling through notes, sweat forming at their temples. Cultural nuances had been missed. Technical terms were mistranslated. One careless phrase had even offended a delegate from Tokyo. The CEO's jaw tightened. "If we can't communicate," he said coldly, "there is no deal." Outside the conference room, pushing a mop across the marble floor, Daniel Reyes pretended not to listen. He was used to being invisible. At 38, Daniel wore a gray janitor's uniform with his name stitched in fading blue thread. He worked the night shift at the prestigious Orion International Tower, cleaning up after the people who ran the world. Most days, no one looked at him twice. But Daniel spoke 8 languages fluently. He just never told anyone. After his wife, Sophia, passed away from cancer 5 years earlier, Daniel's world had collapsed. She had been a linguistics professor who loved languages like some people love music. Together they had traveled, studied, and taught. After her death, Daniel had taken whatever job he could find to support their 6-year-old daughter, Camilla. Cleaning floors paid the bills. Languages stayed locked in his heart. That afternoon, Camilla had hugged him before school and said, "Papa, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you." He didn't feel brave. He felt tired. Inside the conference room, the argument grew louder. The French delegate accused the Brazilian representative of altering contract terms. The German investor insisted a key clause had been mistranslated. The Mandarin interpreter looked overwhelmed. The Japanese executive sat in visible discomfort. Daniel's hands paused on the mop. He knew what had gone wrong. The issue wasn't vocabulary, it was context. A single technical phrase had multiple meanings across cultures. It required not just translation, but understanding. He took a breath. This wasn't his place. He could lose his job. But he remembered Sophia's voice. "Language isn't about words, Daniel. It's about building bridges." He knocked gently on the conference room door. The room turned. A janitor standing at the doorway. The CEO frowned. "We're in the middle of something." Daniel swallowed. "Sir, I believe I can help." A few executives exchanged confused glances. One of them chuckled under his breath. "You?" the CEO asked sharply. Daniel stepped inside, heart pounding. "With respect, sir, the disagreement is over the phrase, operational autonomy. In Portuguese, it implies full independent authority. In French corporate law, it often suggests supervised autonomy. In German contracts, the nuance leans toward structured independence." Silence. The German investor blinked. Daniel turned slightly toward the Japanese delegate and spoke in fluent Japanese, explaining the nuance and apologizing for the cultural misstep earlier. The man's expression softened instantly. Then Daniel shifted to Mandarin, clarifying the technical clause that had been mistranslated. Gasps echoed around the table. The CEO stared at him. "How many languages do you speak?" "8, sir," Daniel replied quietly. "Spanish, English, French, German, Portuguese, Mandarin, Japanese, and Arabic." The Brazilian representative leaned forward. "Explain the autonomy clause as it would be perceived in São Paulo." Daniel did, precisely. He translated each executive's concerns in real time, not just converting words, but adjusting tone, intent, and cultural sensitivity. He caught subtle misinterpretations. He softened rigid phrasing. He restored respect where tension had grown. For the first time that day, the room felt calm. 40 minutes later, the deal was saved. 8 signatures hit paper. $1 billion secured. The CEO stood slowly. "Mr. Reyes." "Daniel Reyes." "Mr. Reyes," the CEO said carefully, "why are you mopping floors?" The question wasn't cruel. It was bewildered. Daniel hesitated. "Life happens, sir." He didn't elaborate. He didn't mention hospital bills. Or nights studying contracts while Camilla slept. Or the quiet grief that had hollowed him out. The CEO studied him for a long moment. "Report to my office tomorrow morning." Daniel's stomach dropped. That night, he barely slept. Camilla noticed his worry. "Papa, did something bad happen?" He smiled weakly. "Maybe something good." The next morning, Daniel walked into the executive office wearing his only suit, slightly outdated but carefully pressed. The CEO didn't waste time. "You have a master's degree in linguistics," he said, holding a file. "An experience in international mediation." Daniel nodded slowly. I used to teach. Why didn't you apply for a corporate role? Daniel hesitated. After my wife died, I needed immediate income. I didn't have the luxury of waiting through hiring processes. The CEO leaned back. Yesterday, 14 certified interpreters failed. You succeeded because you understood people, not just language. Daniel said nothing. I'm offering you a position as Director of Cross-Cultural Communications. Full benefits. Triple your current salary. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. But, the CEO continued, I need someone who's not afraid to speak up, even when they're holding a mop. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something crack open inside his chest. Hope. The transition wasn't easy. Some executives resisted taking direction from the janitor. Whispers followed him in hallways. A few employees questioned his credentials. The challenge wasn't language anymore. It was perception. Daniel worked twice as hard. He stayed late developing cultural training programs. He coached executives privately. He built translation systems that prioritized nuance over literal accuracy. And slowly, results silenced critics. International partnerships strengthened. Miscommunications dropped by 70%. Employee satisfaction in global branches rose dramatically. 3 months later, the same German investor who had once doubted him requested Daniel personally for all negotiations. At home, Camilla noticed the difference. You smile more now, Papa. He knelt beside her. I remembered something important. What? That no job defines your worth. One evening, Daniel visited Sophia's grave with Camilla. He placed a small contract copy beside the flowers. We built bridges today, he whispered. Camilla squeezed his hand. Mama would be proud. Years later, Orion International became known not just for its profits, but for its cross-cultural integrity. Daniel was invited to speak at global conferences about leadership, humility, and the power of listening. At one event, a young employee approached him nervously. Sir, she said, I'm working in the mailroom. I have skills no one knows about. But I'm scared to speak up. Daniel smiled gently. Don't wait for permission to use your gifts. He paused, remembering the knock on the conference room door. Sometimes the world is one brave sentence away from changing. The applause that followed his speech wasn't for the executive he had become. It was for the janitor who dared to step forward. And that is the truth most people forget. Talent doesn't disappear when life gets hard. It waits, waiting for courage, waiting for opportunity, waiting for one moment, when 14 experts fail, and an ordinary single father chooses not to stay silent. Because sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who saves it. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is knock.